When you start making royal icing, the dry ingredients are going to be really crumbly when you first put the water in, and it's going to start looking like this. You want to add just a tiny bit of water, like half a teaspoon at a time, because it can go from way too dry to way too wet very quickly. So once you get it to a decent whipping consistency, just whip it until it forms a stiff icing. You don't want it too stiff or it'll be too dry. Now, when you get to the stiff consistency, that's for piping, but to do the flood work where you're actually covering cookies and it's smoothing out into that smooth surface, you need to add a tiny bit of water at a time. I'm literally just a few drops, and just be very careful with this. You can always add more icing. So take it, take some out, put it in a bowl and add the water like this, but just do a teeny bit at a time and then stir it up. And what you're watching for is when the string of icing that you drop onto the icing in the bowl, it takes about 3 to 5 seconds to kind of sink back into the icing on the surface and make a smooth surface. So you're seeing right here, it's too stiff. It's not smoothing out, and you can still see kind of peaks when you're stirring it. So I've sped this up. I think there were like 4 or 5 additions of water as I was working on this, and just do a literally tiny bit at a time. Again, you can always, if it gets too wet, you can always put some more icing in. But you can see how that big clump at the top is not sinking into itself and smoothing out. That means it's still too stiff for the flood work. So just add a tiny bit more water and keep stirring it until it gets to the point where it sinks into itself after you're counting to 5. Like, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it should sink into itself in a smooth kind of consistency. You'll see the surface will be smooth, because what you want it to do is to put it on the cookies so that when they smooth out, you don't have to worry about the surface because it just smooths itself out. It's kind of like self-leveling. So right at this point, the icing is almost ready. I add a little bit more water, and you can see now that when I drip the icing onto the surface, it is going to sink into itself and kind of form a smooth surface in about 4 seconds, 5 seconds. And this is the right consistency for flood work. And look at that string that I'm putting in there and how it's sinking into the surface and just kind of disappearing and creating a smooth texture. That's the texture that you want it to be for doing the flood work on the cookies. Store it in a container with a wet paper towel over plastic wrap while you're working on it.